a group of American citizens, Americans, got together and said enough. Enough. Enough of being discarded, enough of being marginalized, enough of being discounted, enough of having our voices silenced, enough of being imprisoned unjustly, and enough of having no recourse. Enough of being taxed so that the 1% and the few can enjoy more. Enough of having our needs discounted so that someone else can thrive. Enough of having our needs not be counted. And so they got together and they wrote a new order. They wrote, "We the people," in order to form a more perfect union, to establish this new system. They did establish something greater, and they wrote in the founding documents that every single one of us, men and women, even though they didn't say it that way, but we know that that's the truth, and each and every one of us, despite our color, our race, our heritage, are all created equal in the eyes of the divine, and that is the new order. Now, they didn't make this up out of whole cloth. They did not create this out of nothing. This was a system of understanding that had been evolving in the human consciousness for decades, for centuries. It was founded in the Greco-Roman democracies and the republics. It was founded in England at the time when we were talking about the rule of law and the new understanding of the voice of the people. And it was a time it was an idea whose time had come. And I argue we are right back there now. We are right back where we need to be, constantly creating a more perfect union, constantly creating a system that works for everyone. No exceptions, no exclusions. No one left out. But this idea that is taking hold in our consciousness, our country's consciousness, and the world's consciousness right now is that we must protect our own and disregard others. And I would argue that that is the antithesis of what this country was founded on and the antithesis of spiritual teachings. We know that we prosper when we let everyone prosper. We know that everything lifts up when we all have equal access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And until we do create that new understanding and that new heaven on earth, that new utopia in consciousness and in our own lives, it will not appear in our systems, and it will not appear in our world. The problem is we keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. We keep acting in the same habitual ways. We keep creating the same life. What really it needs is a new pattern. How many of us say, well, let's just wait till the next midterm elections and we'll change that? How much the next presidential election? We'll only have 3.5 more years to get through this section, and then something else will happen. But that happened 4 years ago, and 4 years before that, and 4 years before that, and 4 years before that, and 4 years before that. And we are on this merry-go-round, just going round and round and round, changing seats on it, but never really changing the pattern. Have you noticed? We keep doing this over and over. And in order to establish a more perfect union, we have to establish a new pattern, a new way of being in the world. And this isn't exclusive to us and them. It's not Democrat and Republican. It is all of us. And we do it in many, many, many ways. I know I have done it and continue to do it personally. 22 years ago, I stood on a balcony patio in the hills of Pennsylvania, having a fierce and determined argument about whether I had to follow the rules of someone else's structure about how I should live my life. I mean, I knew that I had created the greatest successes in my life by using affirmations, using these spiritual teachings of unity that I had discovered in the New Thought movement to create a life that was beyond my wildest dreams. I knew how to do the success. And why should I listen to this group of people in the other room who were going to try and tell me how to live my life? And in the middle of that argument, I heard a voice as loud and as crystal clear as booming. It was my voice, but it wasn't my voice. And it said, "Ken, you have been trying this your way for so long. Why don't you give this a try?" Now, I was in this beautiful patio in the hills of Pennsylvania in an institution, a rehab, because my life, despite my arguments, was not all that wonderful. My life was falling apart, and yet I clinged to the old patterns of me figuring it out myself. And at that moment, I knew that I had to take advice. I had to change the way I was doing things. And I turned on my heels. Oh, by the way, I was all alone on that patio. This argument only happened in my head. Right? There was no one out there. I was just having a cigarette break at the time. And that's one of the habits I got to let go of too. And it's been 20 years since I had a cigarette and 22 years since I had any other drugs or alcohol. But what was most amazing about that is I went in and I started new patterns. I started doing the 12-step work. I started putting pen to paper. I started doing the actual physical work of changing my consciousness. And that created the life that propelled me to this moment where I stand before you today. That one moment, I can see crystal clear how it made all the difference because I took on a new pattern. I took on new energy and I took on a new way of life. So what I want to propose to us is that what we do in our own selves right here and right now, while we're facing all these things that seem to be on the outside of us, are not really on the outside of us. They're within us. We keep going through our lives. We keep engaging in politics. We keep engaging in the conversations with each other the same exact ways. And what do we get? The same exact situations. Joe Dispenza, in his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, talks about it this way. We cannot create a new future while holding on to the emotions of the past. So if we're finding ourselves so angry about what happened last week, about what happened in that election, about what they said yesterday, we are stuck in the past. And we are doing it. We are the ones who are watching yesterday's news today and pretending like it's not affecting our future. So we all know the truth, right? There is only now. There's only the present. This is the only moment. But what we're thinking about in our heads is the things that flash across our phones and our newsreel and what someone said yesterday or last week or what happened last month. And we are taking that and projecting it into our future, saying how awful it's going to be, how terrible. We have to just gird our loins for the next few years and get through it, right? And that is our energy, our emotion, and it's poison. It's the toxins we take on and wonder why our bodies hurt. We wonder why we're exhausted all the time. We're wondering why we're not enjoying the very essence of the life that we have, the bounty that we have, the unbelievable beauty that is this planet and this life. Because we are so caught up on what someone else did and what the future is going to be about it. Because we're caught up in our own emotions. So Great, Ken. Great. So now what? How do we do this? How do we really change ourselves and the outside? How does that happen? Well, the only way is tiny, tiny incremental habits. Does anyone know the work of James Clear, Atomic Habits? Reverend Elizabeth introduced me to this book like 3 years ago, and he's a phenomenon. But he talks about it this way: begin to act like the person you want to become. What a simple, simple solution, right? But no, we don't. We complain. We bemoan. I like that word, bemoan. It just means complaining. Right? We keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting the outside world to change. So what is the tiniest way that you could change today? What if you didn't complain about politics for 24 hours? That made some people nervous. What will I do with my day? What if you didn't watch the news for a week? Would the news stop? No. What if you took that energy and time into creating what you want to create in the world? What if you volunteered for some cause, for immigration, for reading, for literature, for homelessness? What if you volunteered at a soup kitchen? What if you volunteered to help us create a program that would shift our consciousness? What if you could come up with a new way that we could reach out to more and more people to share this message of the only way that this is going to change is if we do, right? Those tiny little ripples you could make today don't get made because you won't drop a new rock in the pond. What happens is that the status quo exists because we would rather protest verbally than protest with actionable items, right? And don't get me wrong. Hello. I am not saying that we shouldn't protest. I'm not saying we shouldn't say, no, this is not good enough. This is not what I see for the world. Yes, of course we should do that. Our founding fathers did it. They made it a big old ass declaration, right? They said it out loud and clear. They made their statements. I'm not saying not to do that, but that alone is not enough. The ideas that they put into our Declaration of Independence and into our Constitution were great, but their system of putting it in were flawed, and they left it to us to be able to correct it. Well, now is the point of correction, right here and right now. So what is it that we need to do? Now, I'm loath to get involved in politics because I find it a time suck that drains my energy. But I will get involved in spreading ideas that uplift us all. And I will enjoy having the conversations with people about what that could be. That lights me up. So what I'm asking each and every one of you to do is to find what lights you up and do that. To find what makes you come alive. Howard Thurman, the world doesn't need more people who are fulfilling a purpose. What the world needs is more people who have come alive, right? Who've come alive. And when we can come alive in what we feel is the most important thing in the world, and we can share that, the world will never be the same. You know, I want to be really clear again. I have been talking about what's wrong. I have been laying out what I think needs to happen. And I have thrown our founding fathers under the bus, rightfully so. Okay? They would agree with me, I'm sure. Since they're not here to argue with me, I'm going to say that they agree with me. And at the same time, We have the freedom we have in the country we have because of the work they did and the risks they took. They were very substantial risks, right? Was it perfect? Hell no. Was it all right? Hell no, not to the people who were enslaved, not to the women of the country, not to the Native Americans. Hell no, to the indigenous people of America. Hell no. And it is still our right as a group of citizens and our obligation as a group of citizens to create something new. If you want a new reality, if you want something new, you must first become someone new. I had this revelation in my book, The 5 Steps of Manifestation. The third step is to take concrete steps, to take steps to create what you want to do. And I got all the way through the book and we're teaching it to the class who just ended last Monday. Thank you all for being part of that class. It was so enlightful and helpful. But what I realized is that, it's not enough to take the same steps. You have to take new steps. You have to become someone new. It's not enough to take action. The actions we've all taken have gotten us right to where we are. So when I write the addendum to the book, it is going to include the fact that we have to become someone new first. We have to take new action. We have to do the work to transform ourselves at core so that the world we see on the outside, the world we inhabit, and the world we leave to our descendants and our children and our children's children is substantially different than the world we inherited and that we were gifted. You know, this is not free. Freedom comes at a cost. And I loved the songs. I loved every one of the songs they sang today. And there's tons more we could choose to. We'll do it every year. We'll find new freedom songs. Because we have to give. We have to give wastefully, extravagantly, wholly, completely, at core to what we want to create. And that legacy of when we do that kind of work, when we step up and say, this is mine to do, this I will do, this is how I will leave the world different than I found it, is the greatest gift we can ever give. We may never sit under the shade of that tree. We may never see it, like Moses, never see the promised land. But that doesn't mean that we don't build it, brick by brick, step by step, action by action, and shift in consciousness by shift in consciousness, which is a fancy way of saying shift your thinking. Shift your stinking thinking. Shift your lack thinking and step into the world of infinite possibility.